Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
That's my talk. So you can do the next song. Don't you love it when that's, don't even have to come up and do a talk? I did notice for a moment you were sitting there waiting for the sound to get turned on the piano, right? Yeah. This morning I had one of those dreams. One of those minister's dreams. Like the singer is sitting there going, the sound is not on and I can't sing anything. So the minister's dream is I show up and the sound team is not there. There's somebody else who's running the sound system. I have no idea what he's doing. The choir is singing, there's no sound. I'm helping, we're giving bicycles away to a South American family, and I'm helping carry bikes up, so I've taken my jacket off and set it down, and I'm running in late for the talk, and I suddenly realize I've left my notes at home, and I can't find my jacket. Cynthia's saving a seat for me, but then I can't find Cynthia. There's this big, huge wooden architectural thing in the middle of the congregation here, or the hallway. Everybody's talking. There's some guy who's giving a mini sermon right over in there somewhere. One of those dreams. You ever have those? Yeah, that was this morning at about 4:30. No, I didn't have any tequila last night, and I did not have 3 pickle and bean burritos last night either. So it was just, I don't know what caused it. It was just there in the ethers. Our talk today, take a breath. It's called The Spring of Life. It's from Emma Curtis Hopkins' Scientific Christian Mental Practice, Chapter 7, if you want to follow along in your books. The spring of life. And it's using the metaphor, Jesus used this metaphor, a lot of mystics have used this metaphor, of that spring of water, being the spring of life, and this life-giving spring that's everywhere present, that comes out and serves as a source of this life-giving water from some unseen source. And if you've noticed that, springs by their nature, we don't see them, and suddenly they're up above the ground, right? Right, okay, that's a spring, as opposed to a river, which is already above ground. So it's this thing that suddenly shows up from a hidden source, a hidden area, and we start to open that, or it opens up and refreshes us. So I want you to take a moment to just simply take a breath, close your eyes if you would gently, and visualize yourself next to a spring right as it's coming out of the ground. By the way, this is a great visualization for a hot day. And imagine yourself right by this cool, life-giving spring. You can smell the water, it's fresh. You can hear the sounds of life that are gathering around this stream. Perhaps if you feel comfortable with that, you reach over and grab a handful and sip from this stream. And just notice this energy as it moves through every cell of your body, and how fresh you feel, how more enlivened you feel. Breathe that in and let it go. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. The spring of life is our metaphor today for spirit, that spirit within us, which is always within us. But sometimes we forget to let it out, right? So it comes out. The way the spring gets out is it needs an opening. It needs an opening. And an opening for the springs are often created by a weakness or a crack or fissure in the earth, right? It's not the strongest places that the spring comes out. It's the places where the earth is weakened a little bit or cracked a little bit. Got a metaphor here? So Emma tells us to let it out as we, in our human mind, begin to let it out. And the places we let it out oftentimes aren't our strongest places. It's when we finally hit that point of weakness, when we finally hit that point of cracking. And we fight that so often. We got to keep it all together and look perfect. We got to figure it out ourselves. We got to do it all ourselves. And the invitation from Spirit is, no, let it crack you open. Let it open us up. Through that weakness, oftentimes through that part of ourselves we don't want to reveal, that we want to kind of hide and pretend it's not there. It often takes going where we don't want to go. It takes times of confusion, of anger, of sadness. There's a wonderful poem from one of my favorite poets, David White, called The Well of Grief, which is one of those access points. And it goes, those who will not slip beneath the still surface of the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water, cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. When we're willing to go deep, when we're willing to go to those places that are, you might say, even socially unacceptable, that our intellect and our desire to keep it all together tells us we shouldn't go there, that's where we start to find the Spirit. That's where we find the coins that others have left, but are there become our dreams, become our richness, become our wealth. I had a friend this morning who posted on Facebook, it was 6 years ago today, that her son passed away all of a sudden, 19-year-old son. And she had posted from a post that she had out on Facebook the day before. She said it was the day before her world changed. And many of us have points where, our world changed. I remember I have a picture of a group that I was involved with a small empowerment group in Seattle, and we were out to dinner on the evening of September 10th, 2001. All of us smiling, and of course the next morning the world changed. And so we've all had that. We've all had this well of grief. And she talked about the richness from it and the depth of it and the angst and the going where they never wanted to go, and yet coming out and finding themselves whole on the other side of it, the whole family. And so will we open to Spirit? Will we let that spring of life, and it doesn't have to be that hard, it doesn't have to be that deep of a tragedy, but oftentimes it takes that before we crack open. My invitation today is going to be, do it sooner. Do it when it's gentler. Do it when, as Esther Nicholson would say, we get the ivory invitation, or at least the pink invitation, and not wait for the red one. So we start to open up to that. A way to open up to Spirit is to involve your heart. So many of us in the Western culture, we live from our head, right? We live from our intellect. We live from trying to think it through. Instead, allowing our hearts to be the opening to that flow. And so even just putting your energy, putting your attention into that heart area and allowing it to open, to start to be more open, to start to be softer. And we let go of intellectually trying to figure it out. Whenever I do a practitioner session and I'm working with somebody and they say, well, I'm trying to figure this out, I go, stop, time out, don't. You've been trying to figure this out for how many years now? And it's usually a long time. Anybody besides me trying to figure things out for a long time? Yeah. Stop trying to figure it out. If you could have figured it out, you would have already. Okay? Instead, let the heart take you to someplace different. Emma tells us, the line right after that reading, is that immediately we uncover the divine mind in man. It shows action in making fresh life in everybody and everything we meet. As soon as we uncover this divine mind, this reminds me of the parable of Jesus' parable of the prodigal son. As soon as he starts back towards the Father, what does the Father do? Rushes out to greet him. Rushes out with new clothing and a new ring. Arranging for a party, a barbecue to be thrown back at the ranch. Immediately we uncover the divine mind. It shows action. As soon as we turn to Spirit and say, yes, something happens, action starts to flow, and it creates a fresh life, not the same old stale life that we've been living over and over and over again. I know you don't, but you know people who live the same stale life, right? You know, they're 60 years old and they've lived the same day for 60 years. Or maybe 45, they quit after they were teenagers or what, but whatever. We start to move on. But we have to uncover that divine mind. We have to uncover the spring. I remember a number of years ago, there were projects throughout a number of cities and towns. I don't know if Reading did it or not, but they were to surface or uncover streams that had been hidden over, paved over oftentimes as the city grew and was built over it. You know, they oftentimes had streams that were running underground, but they found that the life of those streams completely decayed once they started to cover them over. And so there was a surfacing project trying to get those streams uncovered, you know, back up into the fresh air so that fish could enjoy the sunshine and the life energy that was the nature of the stream could be restored to this area. We cover over our streams, don't we? We cover over that spring. We cover it over sometimes just with unawareness. Most of us sitting here are not unaware that there's a spring of life going on with us, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting in this church. But we know people who have unawareness, and there's times we just plain old forget, right? We just forget. You know, afterwards we wake up and say, God, I could have had a V8. I could have had a spring of life, you know? But we have this unawareness. Another way we cover it over is we value my way more than Spirit's way. Ouch. My way. I want it my way. We cover it over with old habits. Whenever this happens, I always react this way. My family's always been like this. You know, whatever it is, I've always been like this. I can't change, I'm just who I am. Okay? And then finally, playing small or safe. Who am I to let that beautiful spring of Spirit shine and bubble up through me and live a life that's a result of that? No, let me stay safe. I'll fit in with my peeps better. I'll be safe. You know, a lot of us grew up trying to be invisible as kids, right? We learned that that was a safe way to do things. And sometimes through society we continue to try and be invisible. And when we let that spring of life out, it's not that it does crazy things, but it does make us more visible. We're more alive. We have this life-giving energy. We're suddenly singing our own songs. You know, we're suddenly having fun. We're suddenly, you know, having a greater joy. And people around us who are used to us operating at a certain level sit there and go, what got into you? You know? And so are we willing to be seen as more alive? Yes, I am. David White has another metaphor in a different poem. Always the life energy smolders inside when it remains unlit. The body fills with dense smoke. Always the life energy smolders inside. The spring is always present. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas says we have this life energy within us, and if we let it out, it will free us, and if we don't, it will kill us. Will we let that energy out? Will we let this spring flow? Because it wants to flow. Its nature is to continue to erode, you know, the ground underneath, right? The spring is looking for a way out. It's looking for a point of expression. And that's where, if we're gentle with ourselves, if we're paying attention, we can start to say, yes, I invite you. And if we're not paying attention, it goes, bang, I'm coming out, you know? We know this? I know you don't, but you've seen people that that's happened in their life. As we uncover the spring, as we allow it to flow, what Emma tells us is the mind shows what is already worked out in spirit. Your health, your love, your abundant good is already worked out in spirit. Your creativity, your wisdom is already worked out in spirit. Spirit doesn't have to figure that out. It already has. Okay? It's showing up as you right here, right now. It took the time and the energy and the thought and the love and the caring to be you. Look at your neighbor and tell them, Spirit took the time to be you. And it still is taking the time and energy to be you. Okay? Breathe that in. Our good is already worked out in spirit. We don't have to make it move into something that it's not. When a spring comes up out of the ground, it already moves into the form. It moves into where it's needed, where the opening is already laid. And oftentimes when we're inviting spirit to move out, it's because we're suffering or feeling hurt in a certain area. So we already have this valley created that it can run through, this creek bed, if you will, that it can run through. Our heart is hurting somewhere. And it naturally goes in and fills that area. That is the nature of spirit. I don't have to force it into some shape that it's not. It is that already. I get to trust it as it reveals itself through me. So as we stop believing in the external world, I love there's a wonderful illustration in the Quick Start program that we use with our new members, and anybody who ever wants to take that, I don't care how long you've been coming here, it's a great little two Sunday or two evening, 2.5 hour each evening program. But it has a wonderful metaphor of the movie screen of life. And the movie screen, comes, it's the old projectors, it's a little bit dated, but the projector is just shining the light. Spirit, right? Just shining the light. The light doesn't care what's put in front of it, does it? The water of the spring of life does not care what we use it for. It doesn't matter whether we use it to drink, whether we use it to bathe or wash our clothes, whether we use it to irrigate our farms, our fields. If we're not wise in our use, it doesn't matter. It'll flood our homes for you. Thank you very much. If that's the direction that we've laid for it. It doesn't matter if we use it for hydroelectric energy. It doesn't care. So this light on the movie projector doesn't care what's shown in front of it, but we show something in front of it. We show this movie in front of it, and that projects out onto the screen. And most people in their lives are trying to do what? They're trying to manipulate this screen. They're trying to stop what's happening on the screen by working on the screen. Doesn't work too well. Have you noticed? Okay. What's the Who's meet the new boss, same as the old boss? We keep going through this. When's the next political leader going to come who's going to be the champion and save us all? Okay? I'm sorry, it's none of the ones coming. It's none of the ones that have been. It's us. You want to know who's going to save us? Look in a mirror. That's my political statement for the day. When we stop working on the screen and start working on the movie, and we are creating the movie moment by moment. We are the director, the actor, the screenwriter. We are creating this as it goes through. That's the internal process. When we bring it more into alignment with the spiritual vision of our lives, then the outer changes. But the outer, while we're working on it, calls and screams at us, doesn't it? We look at our checkbook and it says, you got to do something. And so we go on and try and fix it out there, get a better job, save some money, do something to manipulate something around. Our relationships, our health, we get a diagnosis, whatever. We try and do the stuff out there. But what we have to do is stop trying to do it out there, and we have to uncover that spring within, that spirit within, and turn to that, because that is the real reality. And we have to make a choice in our lives. Do I actually believe that spirit is my first reality or not? Okay? My friend Edward Bill Hume once asked, either God is all there is or it isn't, from our perspective. It is. But either we know that or we don't. Either we accept that and start operating that way or not. And so we have to choose which is really our reality. Mary Morrissey likes to say that everything is created twice, once in mind and once in form. It's first created in mind. And the gift of spirit is thought. It's created in mind. All of our solutions, all of our answers, everything we're looking for is first created in thought. But we have to open to Spirit to listen to that thought from Spirit. And so Spirit is the source, and when we let Spirit have its way, we start to experience a life that's a different life than when we try and have our way. That spring continuously dissolves our resistance until we say yes. So my question is, are you willing to say yes now? Yeah. So homework this week. 3 things. These are fairly deep things. So first of all, become aware of what you use in your life to cover over the spring of life. What do you use to cover it over? Worry? That's a great one. Worry's been described as the negative use of the visualizing power of the mind. I'm going to visualize what I don't want and make that big and bold in my mind. You know, if you ever work with visualization, they tell you to take whatever you do want and make it big and bright and bold in your mind. Okay? And when we're worrying, we're taking what we don't want and making it the big, bright, bold thing in our minds, right? Thank you. Whether you know it or not, that's what you're doing. Okay? So I invite you, if you catch yourself worrying, to sit there and go, wait, what do I want instead? And flip it around. Flip it around and say, what do I want instead? And I'm going to choose to make that big and bold and bright in my mind and take this image of, you know, whatever it is that I'm worried about and shrink it down. Make it small. We can use busyness. Being busy all the time. I don't do that one at all. Especially not when I'm here. Being busy all the time. When in the ordination process, when I was ordained as a minister, there's a phrase that they use in there that any minister who is too busy to pray and meditate is far more busy than God ever intended. Okay? And I could say the same for all of us. Any of us who are not doing the spiritual practice, who are not taking the time to pray, which is speaking to God, and meditate, which is listening. Conversations work better when we do both, right? Is too busy. There's an old phrase in meditation, you know, if you only need to meditate 20 minutes a day, but if you don't think you have enough time, then you need to meditate an hour a day. Okay? So we can use busyness. We can use things like food, or TV, or face crack. Facebook, crack, cocaine, metaphor. Okay, thank you. Any of those things to get ourselves hooked and to stay away from our spiritual practice. Okay? We can use, of course, like I mentioned, trying to figure it out. Trying to figure it out. If you hear your mind saying, I got to figure this out, stop yourself and just say, oops, time to take a spirit drink. And then the beliefs that you're not enough. It goes back again to who am I to be magnificent and beautiful and just out there and full. Let go of that. Can I say it? Crap. Okay, good. Let go of that. It is not the truth of anybody on this planet. We are here to be those shining, bright examples of Spirit. Jesus said he's here that we could have life and have it more abundantly. The Buddha basically said the same thing. So that's number one. Become aware of what you use to cover over the spring. Number two, take a specific area of your life and turn it over to Spirit. Take something specific. Probably that thing that you've been working on for a long time. You know which one that is, right? Okay. That thing that's always had you, you think you're free of it, and all of a sudden you're not again. Let it go. Stop trying to figure it out. Stop trying to work it out. Stop trying to whatever it out, and turn it over to God. Turn it over to Spirit. Let that surface crack open. When our surface cracks open, we might look a little messy for a while. Would that be okay? Okay? We might not look socially acceptable. We might sit there and go, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Your friends might sit there and go, what are you doing? But if you know that you're opening to Spirit and you're following that path, and there's a sense that you have when you're doing that, you stay on that path and you keep walking it, and it will free you. So you let that path unfold. So that's number 2, is take a specific area and turn it over to Spirit. And finally, number 3, engage your heart in the process. Engage your heart. Imagine taking that, whatever it is, and moving it from your head where you've been trying to work with it into your heart energy. Imagine from your heart a spring that's flowing from the heart into that area of your life. So if it's your finances, if you've been worried about finances and working on your finances for a while, imagine that there's, quit trying to figure it out, and imagine that there's a spring of life flowing from your heart into your checkbook, into your savings account, into whatever metaphor you want to use, your financial. If you're worried about a diagnosis in your body, imagine that spring of life flowing out of your heart in, through, and as every cell of your body, bringing that life-giving energy, that fresh spring energy into every cell. If you're in a relationship that you're having challenge, or you're not in a relationship and you want to be, imagine from that heart space, that spring flowing into that relationship. Imagine that. So that's your homework this week. 3 things. Become aware of what you're covering over with. Take a specific area and be willing to turn it over to Spirit. And finally, engage your heart in the process. Are you willing to work with that this week? Yes. Great. If you do, I can promise you huge results. Huge results. I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes. Spiritual experience is a fact. Isn't that a great statement, just by itself? That's not the whole reading, but isn't that a great statement? Spiritual experience is a fact. This is like, no, we're not messing around. This is not woo-woo juju, is it? Spiritual experience is a fact. Edison said there are invisible laws that work with mathematical certainty. We can't see it, but they work. For all your friends who don't understand this stuff and say, well, prove it to me, tell them thank you very much, and I'm doing so by my life. Spiritual experience is a fact. Spirituality may be defined as the atmosphere of good, the realization of God. It cannot and does not borrow its light from another, no matter how great or noble that other may be. It springs from within, coming from that never-ending fountain of life, that never-failing fountain of life, which quenches every thirst, whose source is eternity, the wellspring of existence. It is a revelation of the self to the self, putting one back on the track of his own self-dependence on Spirit, our own at-one-ment with reality. This week I invite you to tap into that fountain, to tap into that spring of life that already exists within you, and be at one with that spiritual reality, that spiritual truth of who you are. Let's move into prayer. And so I recognize that there is this one infinite presence, this one flowing life energy, this one power, this one grace, this one love, this one abundant good, always eternally, fully flowing, just being itself. And its self is good. And itself is expressed in, through, and as us, each of us. Each of us is that infinite presence. Each of us is that spring in the flow. And so I speak my word that we remember this more beautifully, more powerfully, more clearly than ever before. That we uncover whatever we have used to hide it over. All the old things we learned as children, all the old things we've learned from outside sources, we let go of that and uncover that beautiful spring of life that lives and flows within us and is us, is our true nature. Every cell of our body, every thought, every feeling, every aspect of our being is alive with this flow. And so we open to that flow. We let ourselves stand in the power of that flow to be the beautiful fountains of life that each of us is individually. We allow this life energy to fill us, to flow through us, to express as us in every single aspect, in every single way of our lives. We cast off all the old stuff. We surface our stream into the light of day. We don't have to hide anymore. And so with that boldness that water flows, the combination of gentleness and the boldness, we allow ourselves to simply be this week. And know that blesses us and blesses everything else in life. And for this blessing, I'm grateful. For the flow, for the willingness of each person here to simply allow that spring of life to move through them, I'm ever so grateful. And so we allow this process to unfold perfectly. There's a law, there's a growth process within Spirit, a creative process within Spirit that knows exactly how to express this in, through, and as each of our lives. And all we need to do is turn to Spirit and say yes. And it says yes right back to us and rushes into action to express its true nature in our lives. And it is done here and now. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you.
To love, serve.